We're going to go ahead and get right into it with the running backs. And the first running back off the board in the second round at pick 22 was one Bishop Sankey going to the Tennessee Titans. So, Jim, as our resident college/rookie NFL expert, you watch tons and tons and tons more college football than Jay and I combined. What are your thoughts on Bishop? Number one is from his collegiate career, his thoughts on him going to the Tennessee Titans, which was the best landing spot for a rookie going into this draft, moving forward for 2014.
Yeah, well, first of all, I mean, I try to catch about 6 or 7 Oregon Duck games a year, so I love college football religiously. Got to actually see Bishop Sankey play, I think, 3 times now. Twice I've seen him play, at least the last 2 years. Anyways, what this kid brings to the table, he's a workhorse. This guy is rather big. In my opinion, he was one of the big 3 running backs that would be an immediate impact depending on what team they went to. It's a very thin class of running backs this year. There's none that are like just absolutely elite. They're going to be game changers, nothing like we've seen in the past couple of drafts, quite frankly. So what Bishop Sankey brings to the table for the Tennessee Titans is he's a 3-down back. Guy can move. He's got quick feet. Definitely something where we got to follow this whole Sean Green issue, because if Sean Green, quite frankly, he can't play, or he does, or he gets injured, Bishop Sankey's going to get a lot of carries. He's worth taking kind of a mid to late round draft pick on a flyer on, because he's worth the risk. I mean, he could be the only running back, quite frankly, for the Tennessee Titans, especially after they got rid of Chris Johnson. So he could be the guy of the future. Now, keep in mind, he is getting paired with Jake Locker, his old teammate back at University of Dubs, Washington. So that's just something to keep an eye on, especially going into training camp and into preseason games. He might even outright beat it and take it from Sean Green, quite frankly, because Sean Green hasn't done anything but beat out Trent Richardson for most yards per carry.
Yeah, that's what I see happening. I don't see Sean Green being relevant with Sankey over there in Tennessee. I think that he's definitely going to end up with a starting job there. Maybe not right away, but he'll work his way into it pretty fast.
Yeah, and I've been looking kind of at the numbers of where the so-called experts have him actually predicted to go in the redraft leagues, and they're putting him in somewhere in the top 20, the low top 25, so anywhere from kind of 22 to 31 range for running backs off the board. So and I think because it's not necessarily, and again, I don't watch a lot of college football, but it's not necessarily because of him and his talent per se, as much as it is about where he landed at Tennessee. Yeah, and yes, Sean Green is not Adrian Peterson, LaDainian Tomlinson, and so forth, coming off this second knee surgery in the offseason. So it's just really sketchy. So I think if drafting him in that range, kind of taking a flyer on him, it's probably the best flyer you can take this season for a rookie running back. So we're going to move on to Jeremy Hill, running back drafted out of LSU to the Cincinnati Bengals. If you're not following us at home on YouTube, Jim is stroking the tiger, as they say, as we speak. So
this is my Tony the Tiger.
He was drafted directly after Bishop in the second round with the 23rd pick to Cincinnati. Jim, what do you think about his fit there in Cincinnati? Obviously, they have Ben Jarvis, Green Ellis, a.k.a. the law firm there, kind of old, long in the tooth, and they've got the sensational rookie of last year going into his second year, Giovanni Bernard. So what do you think Jeremy Hill can do in this backfield moving forward?
First of all, Jeremy Hill, dude's kind of a beast. He runs bigger than he is. He's a north-south runner, extremely talented. You probably saw some of his highlight reels in some of the LSU games this year. Dude just kind of blew through some guys and definitely created space just because he was so fast. He's not particularly quick to learn offenses, I think is the best way to put it. So I would kind of keep the law firm on retention here early season, and then as the season prevails, I think Jeremy Hill will eventually take over that second role. I don't think this is going to hurt Gio's touches. I don't think this is going to be a drastic change. You might want to watch for the goal line touches, as few as there was this last year for either one of them, Bernard or the law firm. But I think this is something where Jeremy Hill could easily run into that, easily take over short distance carries down the road. So that's kind of my pick on that. I don't think he's really worth a late round gamble because I think you could probably get him off the waivers in most 10-man leagues. 12-man leagues, you're probably going to need to draft him late to get him. So that's just kind of my take on that. Jake?
Yeah, I think if he does take over for the law firm, the guy's going to get goal line carries galore. That's not Gio's forte. But I agree with you. I don't think he dents Gio's value very much. That guy's talented as hell, and is going to be a bell cow back there this year, I think. But yeah, Greenhouse never really impressed me all that much, so I'm pretty excited to see what Hill's got to do.
Yeah, I mean, clearly this running back class is not going to probably be as deep as it ended up being last year. We had a good, 5 rookies who made a absolute fantasy impact, RB1, RB2 types. But, if you want to take a flyer on this guy, and like Jimmer said, in late rounds, or maybe just pick him up on waivers. But, I don't think Giovanni gets hurt at all. But I think, as the season progresses, he could take a considerable amount of attempts, away from Ben Jarvis as the season goes on, and kind of, probably will end up being kind of the handcuff to Giovanni when all things are said and done. So, anything to finish up on that, Jim?
Well, yeah, I just want to talk about 3 more guys real quick, and let's just talk about that are just kind of undraftable real quick, just based on the situation, that we can kind of collaborate on each one of these guys. Carlos Hyde, who went to San Francisco, second-round pick. Charles Sims went to the Bucks, third-round pick. And then Trey Mason, who I really like, he came out of Auburn Tigers, third round. Each 3 of these guys are in a situation where there's just so many running backs already in the backfields. Carlos Hyde, who I think is a tremendous talent, had he gone somewhere else, he would have been a starter. Unfortunately, he's the 5th running back now in that bejumbled backfield behind Frank Gore, Kendall Hunter, LaMichael James, and Marcus Lattimore, the great late Marcus Lattimore. I mean, come on. He's just not going to play. So they're not draftable. Charles Sims, same deal. You just got too many guys there. Doug Martin, Bobby Rainey, and Mike James over there. And same thing for Trey Mason. Obviously Zach Stacy's going to be the work bell cow, if you will, this year. Isaiah Pede and Darrell Richardson are there well. So just to kind of cover those 3 guys real quick, I think they're great guys, great athletes. They're just kind of in the wrong situation, and hopefully that gives them time to develop, and maybe they're worth drafting in later years, especially Carlos Hyde, in my opinion. And you know what? While we're at it, let's throw in Terrence West while we're there for the Cleveland Browns. He's just going to be that third back between an already terrible backfield. Ben Tate's going to be carrying way too many over there. So, guys, any thoughts on those 4 guys?
Yeah, I'll pipe in here. I think for Carlos Hyde, the 49ers, I mean, to me, when I saw that he was drafted there, that draft pick to me screams that Lattimore may not be quite fully ready like they thought. I don't know that that's true. He rehabbed all of last season with a professional NFL staff. I was hoping he would be ready this year. I'm not saying that he's not, but I think they might still be concerned there. I think at the end of the day, I'm just staying away from this backfield. I don't like Frank Gore this year. If you listen to our last podcast, I think this is the year he falls off. Now that they have 27 running backs behind him, I just probably want to stay away from this whole scenario. I don't have much to say on Sims. Trey Mason, I see, they drafted him. I think they learned a lesson from last year. I mean, they went into the beginning of the season with all these, mediocre backs at best. They went back and forth. They didn't know who their starter was. Nobody was performing well. And, week, whatever it was, 3 or 4, Zach Stacy popped, and, he ended up being their guy. But I don't think, because of what they saw at the beginning of last season, they don't have much trust in Cunningham, Darrell Richardson, Isaiah Pede. So I think that's why they drafted Trey Mason. I think Trey Mason probably, as long as he can learn the playbook and so forth, probably becomes, the backup to Zach Stacy almost right out of the gate. We'll just kind of see how that pans out through the offseason and through preseason. It's tough to say, but again, not a guy that you would necessarily draft, maybe in deeper leagues as a backup to Stacy as a flyer, but it may be one of those guys that you end up, dropping in the first 3 weeks. And then Terrence West, to me, there's nobody behind Ben Tate. Ben Tate, he plays through injuries and stuff, but he does get hurt quite a bit. I think this downgrades Ben Tate a little bit in my book. I might drop him, 3, 4, 5 spots on my board because of this. I think Terrence West is probably the best back behind Ben Tate already there with, Chris Obanaya and these guys you never heard on, Deion Lewis and so forth. So he's probably the most talented guy there outside of Ben Tate. And I just don't trust Ben Tate there. I think Ben Tate was a Band-Aid for this backfield. I don't think Ben Tate was brought over there and through free agency to be their long-term guy. I think he's a short-term solution. So I think West could end up being the handcuff to Ben Tate and might very well see more playing time than we realize if Ben Tate struggles or goes down early. Jay, do you have any thoughts on any of these guys?
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on West. I think he's going to give Ben Tate a run for his money. And if this kid shows any pass-catching ability, he may just pass old Ben in playing time by the season. And like you said, Tate, he does get injured. Not the most healthy back in the world, so I think this guy could definitely be worth a handcuff, or just keep a real close eye on the waiver wires for him. Keep an eye on Ben Tate when he goes down.
Yeah. So Jay or Jimmer, any words on Kadeem Carey before we close out kind of the running backs? I know he's going to Chicago, and obviously there's a top 4 overall running back there with Matt Forte. This guy was drafted in the 4th round, kind of towards the latter part of the 4th round. I mean, unless Forte goes down, and if he does, do you think he has any value possibly off the waiver wire?
Yeah, honestly, he's not draftable just because Forte has been kind of a rock of consistency this past year, and quite frankly, Kadeem Carey, he basically led. Now, keep in mind, FBS, that's Division I football. He led it in overall yards, and he wasn't just a product of a system necessarily at Arizona. I got to watch him play firsthand. He beat up a lot of teams. This guy is very big, very physical, very strong. He's not necessarily shifty, but when he hits a hole, he's gone. Goodbye. I mean, he's not the fastest guy, he's not the quickest guy, but he does all the right moves because he's a football player. He gets that. And that's the one difference between him and Terrence West. West played FCS football at Townsend. He didn't play anywhere. So that's why I was never overall particularly thrilled with Terrence West. So that's the difference between the two of those. You got a big league guy that basically already has yards on him. I think of him as an upgraded Monty Ball, in my opinion, is what got Kadeem Carey. So he's game time ready right now. So with that, that's the end of my thoughts on running backs.
All right, guys, well, that's going to wrap it up for our special NFL Draft recap show. On our next show, we'll be breaking down and tiering the top 25 fantasy wide receivers for 2014 and comparing our rankings to the current ADP of Fantasy Football Calculator, so go ahead and tune in to see how we're going to match up there. Again, as a reminder, we are live every 2 weeks in the off-season. We'll be going to every week once we get closer to the start of the NFL season. So tune in this coming Friday, 2 weeks from now, May 23rd, for our next live hangout. In the meantime, download this show on iTunes, find us on Stitcher Radio, and check out our previous shows on the Red Zone Warriors Fantasy Football Show YouTube channel. And don't forget to follow us on Twitter and tweet us all your fantasy football questions at Red Zone Warriors. So for the Cushman and the Jimmer, I am Rob Smith, and remember, if you are taking a fantasy football off-season, then you are already losing. So thanks for tuning in, and we will see you next time.